Alright, today I want to talk about typecasting and coercion. So this is converting primitive values from one data type to another, converting a string to a number to a Boolean, an object to a Boolean, an object to a string, all these different conversions. Now we've got explicit and implicit. I'm not going to get into that. Just different terms get used based on sort of the context for how you're doing it. But really, when it comes down to a practical sense, it doesn't matter if you're calling it converting, casting, coercion, or coercing the value from one data type to another. On the surface, it seems like a really simple thing, because most of the time you're doing something like, I have a string, it's got a number inside of it, and I'm going to convert that to an actual number so I can do some mathematical operation like addition or subtraction. But there's actually a lot of layers to this. So I'm going to go through this and give you a copy of this code. If you look down in the description, you'll see a link to the finished version of this file. And hopefully you can use this as a reference in the future to know exactly what's going to be happening when you're either intentionally or just letting your code do the coercion from one data type to another. All right, so looking at all these different types down here, we've got an object that has some properties. I've got an empty object. I've got an array that has a few values, an empty array, a string, an empty string, a couple of primitive values, numbers, one that's a positive value, one that's 0, a couple of Booleans, true and false, null, undefined, and not a number. So if I take any one of these and I try to convert it to either a string or a number or a Boolean, this is the result that I'm going to get. So any object, doesn't matter if it's empty or it has something inside of it, if you convert it to a string, you will get object object. So that is if you call the toString method, or you do this. You call the string function and you pass in your object as a value. If you try to convert the object that has something inside of it to a number, you'll get not a number. But if you take an empty object and you pass that, try to convert that to a number using either the number or a unary plus operator, you'll get 0, which this is one of those JavaScript like, what the hell? Booleans, true, true, and for the arrays as well. These are all true for the full or empty array. For a string, for the array, what happens is all of the values inside of here get concatenated together. It's just like you're doing the join function. If you're calling the join function, you're building a string, taking all the values, putting a comma between them, and treating it all as one big string. So an empty array does the same thing. You just get an empty string. For number, if the array has something in it, it's going to be a 1. If it's got nothing inside of it, 0 is going to be the numeric value that this is treated like. Both of them true. And this has to do with falsy values. Now, I've got a note down here about falsy values. These are the falsy values. False, 0, empty string, null, undefined, not a number. So these are the ones that are listed in the specification. If your value is one of those, it's considered to be falsy if you're doing some sort of comparison. This is false. Everything else, with a couple of weird, quirky exceptions having to do with the DOM, which we can basically forget about. You're rarely going to come across these things. Basically, if it's one of these values, it's falsy. Everything else is going to be true. So, true, 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 true. Objects, arrays, strings. They're all true until you get down to an empty string, or the number 0, or a Boolean falsy, or these last three at the bottom here. You can see very few of these things are false. Everything else is true. So if it's an object, it's true. Now, for string and empty string, both of those, if you try to convert to a number, you'll get not a number unless it is actually a numeric value that you have inside there. So 43 or 0. If I do one of those things, I will get the actual number 43 or the actual number 0, whatever the number is. If all that I have inside there is numeric, then I will get a number. So that is using the number method, or the unary plus operator, or the unary negative operator. Any of those three will actually convert it to a number. The unary negation or unary negative operator, this one will also flip the sign. So if I said something like log, and we've got, we need a number here, so let's say let n equal 56, and then we did that inside of here. This is going to be, sorry, let's make that a string, so we're doing the conversion. The string 56 with the unary negative operator, this is going to convert that to a number, 56, and it's going to flip the sign. So we are going to get negative 56 as the value for this. If we used the unary plus operator, we're going to get positive 56. So let's open up, oops, open our terminal, we'll run this, and there we go. There's the negative 56 and 56. That's what we're getting here. So we can use those two operators or number, the number function, and we will get these results. So these are the ways of converting it to a number. Converting things to a Boolean, we've got the Boolean function. You pass the value inside of here. It will convert it to a Boolean. Or the logical not operator, or two logical not operators. This one's kind of like the negative unary operator here. This will convert it to a Boolean and flip the sign. This will convert it to a Boolean, flip the sign, and then flip the sign again. So whatever if it was truthy, it's going to become true. If it was falsy, it'll become false. Okay, down to the numbers. No surprise here. 1 becomes 1, 0 becomes 0, and the string values are just the string values, just wrapping quotation marks around these. And we've got true and false. False, that's one of the falsy values, 0. For the Booleans, and the rest of these down here, it's just quotation marks wrapped around whatever the value is, however you would write this. We've got numbers, 1 for true, 0 for false and null, undefined and not a number, both come back as not a number. Again, another one of these little quirky things in JavaScript, but they have their reasons. Okay, so that's basic conversion between these different types, and that's what we use these for. So string or number or Boolean or toString is the same as string. The unary plus is the same as the number. The unary plus operator, same as number. Unary negative, this is the same as number, but then flips the sign. This is a concatenation operator, and we'll talk about the rules for that in just a second, what it makes this one different from this one when converting. And then we've got the Boolean or the logical not operator. We also have parseInt and parseFloat to extract numeric values. The difference between these and number is that the entire thing, the entire string, has to be numeric for number to work. ParseInt, parseFloat will start reading at the left and will stop as soon as they find something that is non-numeric. So a little bit more useful, these ones. All right, now, difference between concatenation and addition. If you have something like this, an expression and an expression with a plus sign between them, how does it know whether or not this is a plus sign or a concatenation sign? Well, if either of these two things is a string, then it's going to treat the plus sign as a concatenation operator. It will convert both values to strings and do the concatenation. If neither of them are strings, it's going to treat it like a plus sign, addition operator, and it's going to coerce both the values into numbers and then do a mathematical operation on the two of them. So we can say, I'm going to take a string and a Boolean. Well, we've got some up here. I want to use one of these. So str and f. So down here, we'll log str plus f. Now, because this is a string, it's going to convert this to a string. str, if we look up here, was hello. F is false, so we're going to get hello false as the answer. So we'll save that. We'll clear and run this again. There it is, hello false. It converted both to strings because one of them. And it doesn't matter what the order is. The Boolean can come first. It's not going to matter. It's going to look at the two things and say, what happens? There we go, false hello. So, same thing, both get converted. Now, if neither are strings, so we'll take a Boolean and then our number from up here, we'll take our num, like that. This is going to be the mathematical one. There's the 1. False, converted to a number, will be 0. This was the value 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. That's why we get this answer down here. Now, for the falsy values, and everything else being truthy, something that we need to make note of here is that there is a boxing operation that can take place. If I have, let's say, the number this, I put that inside quotation marks to make it a string. This is a string, and if I want to call a method on it, you know, could be anything to lowercase. Well, this on its own, that is a string primitive. It's just the number 234, 234 inside of quotation marks, so it's a string with those 6 characters inside of it. So a string is a primitive. That means it's just a value. It doesn't have methods, so how do we do this? How do I call a method on a primitive value? And that's what boxing is. If you're dealing with a number, a string, or a Boolean, and you try to call one of those string methods, the Boolean methods, the numeric methods, what happens is this gets put into a string object, or a number object, or a Boolean object. And that is this. New Boolean, new string, new number. That actually creates an object. That object has the method, gets called, and then the resulting value gets turned back into a primitive value and given back to us. So you remember how falsy values were these things and everything else is truthy? That means Boolean, whatever this is just going to be the primitive. Let me comment this one out. So down here, if I take Boolean of that, so this is a number, it's not 0, so this is going to be true. If I take Boolean with 0, that'll be false. So let's clear this out, run this again. There we go. True, false. Okay, that's what I would expect. Now, what if I do new Boolean 0? This is a Boolean false. Right here, you can see it's been boxed. This is an actual object with the value false inside of it. Okay, great. Now, to do comparisons, okay, if I do true and true, I should get true back. Fair enough, there it is. Here, I'm getting Boolean false back. And that's because the logical AND operator, it's not actually looking just at the truthiness of the two things and then returning whether or not both things were truthy. It does do that. It looks at the truthiness of this, the truthiness of this. But if the first one was truthy, it's going to return the value of this second one. And that's what we're getting here, this Boolean false. Now, if I put that inside of the Boolean, I get true. This is the second operator. So this one was true, so therefore it's returning this part right here. But I've got a falsy value inside of here. I've said new Boolean 0. So that was this thing, Boolean false. It's a Boolean object with the value false inside of it. But if I take an object, any object, and I pass it into Boolean, if we look up here, any object passed in as a Boolean comes back as true. So it's this weird little case, again, where all objects are true. So even if we've done new Boolean, if we've boxed the Boolean value and then converted that or treated that as if it were an actual Boolean, this, because it's an object, comes back as true. So one of those things just to kind of be aware of. All right, now into our last section here, having to do with operator precedence. And this is the long list of operators that are available to us right here. So here are all of the operators that we have access to in JavaScript. And this is the order that they are read. So if you have an expression that's made up of a whole bunch of different bits and pieces, there's a whole bunch of different operators and operands all together in an expression, this is the order. Just like in high school when you're doing order of operations, BEDMAS, and you knew that you had the brackets and the exponents and the multiplication and division and addition and subtraction. You knew what order you had to do them in. Well, in JavaScript, we've got a lot more operators that we have to deal with. The very top level thing is grouping with parentheses. That's the first thing that gets done. Then there's dot notation, square bracket syntax, these two things right here. The new operator will get called. And as we go down, you can see the numbers get smaller and smaller with these different operators. So it will use that sequence. This is the link to it right here. It uses that sequence to determine what order it should be doing any of these things in. So we can end up with places where we are, let's do something like this. So we'll say not array. So this is our array here, and I'm putting in front of this the logical not operator, which is going to convert it to a Boolean and flip the sign. So I should get a false for that. There we go. Here's my whole expression that I want to look at. Now, this may look a little bit strange, but I just want to show you how this order of operations works. Here we have a unary plus operator, the logical and operator, another unary plus, another logical not operator, and then less than and greater than comparison operators. If we look up in that chart, we'll find the unary plus is up here. Yep, there's the unary plus. It's got a value of 17. The logical not also has a value of 17. Less than and greater than are down here at 12. And then the logical or operator way down here at number 6. So that's the sequence that these things are going to be run at. So the unary plus okay, so there's our ranking. Number 17. We'll do the 17s first. So logical not and the unary plus. This array had values. So to convert it to a Boolean, again, it was true. Then we're flipping the sign, so that's going to be a false. We've got false, less than. And here we have, this was a true, and this is converting it to a number. So true converted to the number, 1, or, and this was true, flipped to false, flipped again, so it's true, greater than the empty array converted to a number. Come back up here, empty array converted to a number will give us 0. All right, so there's our level 17. Now the level 12s, the less than and greater than. False, less than 1. Well, this is like a mathematical operator. For this to work, here's another case where coercion is taking place. I can't compare false and 1. I have to convert this false into a number. So that means we're looking at 0 less than 1. And over here, same problem. We've got 1 greater than 0, because it had to convert, in order to do this operation on these two things, it had to convert both values to numbers. And now we're going to have, this is going to be true. And we actually don't have to calculate this side. It's going to calculate this as true and then say, or, okay, I don't need to do that. We're going to do logical short-circuiting here, and then our answer is going to become true. That's what we get out of all of this, with the coercion taking place to change those Booleans into numeric values. So to convert this Boolean into a number, and then this array into a Boolean, and then that Boolean gets changed into a number, that's what we get. And so these the operator precedence is going to give us an order that we can always follow to figure out when we need to do the coercion from one data type to another. The operator, like whether it's the greater than or less than signs, or it's the plus operator, that's another one. Plus operator and the unary plus. So the addition or unary plus. How do we know which one it is? That's a pretty simple one. What if I had something like this? How do you calculate something like this? This is valid syntax. What happens is, with the unary plus, which has a much higher ranking than the addition, if we look in here, number 14, the unary plus is a 17, so the unary plus gets done first, and the unary plus is also right to left as opposed to left to right. Unary plus, so here's a plus sign. It starts at the right and goes over to the left. So we will look at these as unary plus operators first. How do we know it's a unary plus? Well, it's got an operand here, but on this side there's an operator, not an operand. So if we don't have two numeric values or two strings or whatever on either side, then this is obviously the unary plus operator. So we're going to start moving in this direction. This converts this primitive into a number. So we end up with the number 1. Again, we're looking at the next one. This is not a number or a string or a Boolean here, so I can't treat this as a minus sign. It's the unary negation. Convert this 1 into negative 1. So we're up to here now. Negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 1. Flip the sign again. So we go from negative 1 to positive 1. And now we're looking at this last one, and it says, oh, no, there is a value here, so treat this as either a concatenation or an addition sign. Well, if we're looking at this as an addition sign, because neither of the values are strings, so it's addition, not concatenation, 1 plus 1 is 2. So if we clear and run this again, there we go. There's the true that we get for this statement, and there's the number 2 that we get for this one. And VS Code has nicely added all of the parentheses in here for me to show the order of operations. All right, so that's a lot of stuff, a lot of different things to keep in your head. So hopefully you'll be able to use this file with all these comments as a reference. So if you get into a weird situation where you're getting unexpected results, come back and use this. Hope it helps you out. And as always, thanks for watching.